I wonder if you could comment on, I heard you say it's a healing energy. And I just interviewed Stefan Schwartz, and he's done a lot of work with remote viewing and sort of healing through time into the past and studying retroactively. But he said it really seems to be a information phenomenon rather than an energy phenomenon. Like he's done experiments to try to see if it's an information based thing or a some sort of energy. And so he said it actually seems to be information. Uh, could you comment on that at all?
What's information? It's energy. Everything's energy.
Well, I think he would say information is fundamental to energy, like the layer behind energy experience in like physical energy, like measurable energy.
He doesn't have the equipment yet to measure it. It's all energy. Everything's energy. And you can't destroy it. It can change forms, but everything's energy. I don't get tied up in the semantics. I mean, that's a scientific mind doing that. I'm just facilitating healing. And it's an energy healing. It's spirit working through me and with me to help facilitate healing, is how I look at it. So I don't need to know how it works. I just know it works. I know that I can use stem cell energy to help regenerate body parts that have been removed, like kidneys and spleens and livers and whatever. And they show up on subsequent scans sometimes. And I have doctors call me and say, "What the heck are you doing? And how does that work?" And I explain to them, every cell has a nucleus. Every nucleus is surrounded by cytoplasm. Cytoplasm's a watery gel. That's what I see get used energetically. And our bodies have a centrifugal force that spins that helps us divide and replicate cells to the tune of billions of them a day. I watch it happen in warp speed. That's my understanding of it. I don't need to know how it's happening. I just need to know that I'm sending the energy healing, spirit working through me and with me, and the person's receiving it and integrating it in a way that benefits them or not integrating it. And lots of stories are endless of, of how people felt better. We identified chronic conditions that were in place for 20 years and no doctor could figure out what the heck was going on. Well, I could see mold throughout their energy field. I'd say, well, are you living in a moldy house? What's going on with the mold? You've got tons of mold in your system. Have you had a water leak? Yeah, our roof leaked. Yeah, well, we painted over the spots, but they're coming back. Do you have mold? Yeah, we got mold growing in our. I talked to a woman the other day. She said her kitchen cabinets are lined with mold.
Yeah.
The doctors are treating her for Lyme. I said, honey, you got mold. Your
Yeah.
body is full of mold.
Ugh.
Yeah. So, things like that come up with these energy healings. And I call them medical intuitive scans, medical scans.
Cool. Can we do some examples now?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll start with me then.
Okay.
So several years ago now, I guess it was like 8 years ago now, I had a blood clot in my cerebral venous blood clot that obviously didn't kill me, but nobody could figure out what caused it. And I only detected it because I had a headache that got worse and worse and worse over days. And then they said, oh, it's just going to turn to scar tissue and it's just going to be there. And maybe over decades will slowly dissolve and other blood vessels will take up that flow. But then, I was getting imaging scans done every 6 months or so, and it seemed like they were right. It was just still there. And then it seemed like after a few years, it just went away. But I'm really curious because nobody ever could say what it was caused, and I'm just curious if there is any residual scar tissue or what's going on there. And I've talked about this before on my show because it was a big event in my life.
Yeah, no kidding. If you came to me when it was first diagnosed, what I would do, and I'll get you on my radar here in a second, but what I would have done and what I do a lot is there's an interventional radiology procedure that's done where there are tiny little coils of copper that are put up through the femoral artery in the groin, and they go into that blood clot or that aneurysm, and they solidify it, and it stops it from growing. And I watch that procedure happen energetically a lot. If I'll get it, I got a call from a friend, her husband was having symptoms, and she wanted me to scan him. And I said, he's having a stroke. He's got a brain bleed. And so I used that technique, which I'd seen in an actual interventional radiology lab back in the day. And so it's so interesting that I know that I was led to be in the hospital supply industry for 30 years, because I know what a lot of these procedures are, because I was in them or I was involved with the products that were being used. To this day, I can't walk in a hospital or an emergency room without looking to see, okay, who's whatever are they using? What brand? what are you guys doing? Ooh, this is cool. What is this? How do you use this? That's my inventor brain. So I said to my friend, I said, he's having a stroke. You need to call 911. And he did. And sure enough, they got him to the ER, and they got him into the interventional radiology lab, and they put the coils in him. Well, it had already happened energetically. So I could see that. So yeah, I'll be happy to look at your brain and see what's going on there. Yeah.
All right.
So here we go. You're in St. Louis. I'm in Birmingham. So here comes my laser beam from Sweet Home, Alabama, heading up to St. Louis. And it's a laser beam that I watched, Derek, that goes from my solar plexus, and it goes directionally. Like if you were in Greece, it would go across the Atlantic, it would go across Europe. I would find you in Greece. I can find you if you were on Pluto. It doesn't matter. It's just, wherever you are. And then I've got a image of you in my mind's eye, and I'm looking at your head, and I've turned the hologram that's you around. Brain matter looks like thick cooked oatmeal to me, the kind that you'd get at a breakfast buffet. I haven't been able to bake my oatmeal like that at home, but I love it when it's in a breakfast buffet. And so I can see where the scar tissue is. Scar tissue looks to me like chicken cartilage, the kind you'd see inside a chicken breast with the bone in. So I've scooped it out, and then I'm using stem cell energy to fill in where that scar tissue's been taken out. Stem cell energy looks like a light amber colored gel, has sparkles in it because it's woo-woo. Gotta have sparkles. Gotta make it fun. And it has a watery consistency to it. Reminds me of this hair gel when I was a kid called Dippity Doo. It's not a great name. Dippity Doo. You can look it up. It was a real thing.
I feel like
in
I've
the
seen
60s and 60s and 70s. And then there's a centrifuge. There's a vortex that's spinning above that area in your head. And again, that centrifugal force is what transforms the stem cell energy into new body parts. It'll regenerate anything we need. And so I'm watching that. I'm just gonna look around the rest of your brain while I'm in there. Is that okay?
Sure.
Well, I have you on my radar. We may be able to increase your IQ by a few points. What the heck?
Oh, wonderful.
So I'm looking at, okay, so you've got scar tissue in the upper left front quadrant. Did you play sports? Did you play soccer? Did you fall? Were you in a car accident?
I had a few bike crashes.
Okay. All right. And the brain is not secure inside the skull. So that's why they say don't throw babies in the air, because their brains hit the inside of their bony skull. You can lift them, hold on to them, but don't be throwing them.
Yeah.
And so the brain matter slams up against the bony skull, and then it kicks back. So we'll see scar tissue in a couple of different areas when there's some kind of a trauma. So I'm scooping that out. You look like you played soccer. You got like you were doing headers where you were hitting a soccer ball with
just
your
for
head.
a year. I wasn't a big part of my life, but
I can tell. I can tell. I can see it. I can see it in my mind's eye. All right. So I'm scooping that out. You've got about 5 areas of scar tissue that I'm scooping out. Each area gets their own stem cell energy, gets the vortex that's spinning above it. that's recreating brain matter. When I see scar tissue in somebody's brain, and oftentimes I'm led to somebody's head, I always remove it. I, spirit working through me and with me when I say I. I used to say we, and it would freak people out. So I just say I. Uh, and so it didn't freak them out, but they didn't understand it, So I'd say, well, I do it, but it's spirit working through me and with me. When I see a lot of scar tissue in somebody's head, it can occlude neural pathways. And if I'm working with somebody who's having memory issues, they have dementia or Alzheimer's, their head's full of scar tissue, their brain full. So all your new brain matter's getting regenerated. It's almost done. All right. How I know it's done is all the neural pathways light up. And those, Derek, look to me like laser beams as part of a security system that are crisscrossing a room in a museum, and they're guarding the paintings and the artifacts and the statuary. And so your brain's really lit up. So we probably improved your IQ by a couple points.
Wow, that's a wonderful analogy.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I talk in analogies all the time because it gives our human minds a frame of reference for this woo-woo stuff, because we don't have a frame of reference for it.
Yeah. So I think you mentioned that usually when you start scanning somebody, the energy will go to a particular place in the body. But I specifically asked you to go look in my brain. So would it have gone somewhere else if we hadn't have asked that specific question?
Yes, when I talk to somebody on a private consult, I have them for an hour. And when I connect to them, it's always the energy laser beam comes from my solar plexus, hooks into theirs, and then I'll go in blind the first swipe. So something will be identified, they'll be healing. Something else will be identified, they'll be healing. So if I have somebody for an hour, I'll ask them what their symptoms are, just from a logistical time management standpoint. But then I always go in blind first, because oftentimes we'll detect something maybe that's asymptomatic and head off a problem at the past before it becomes problematic. Or we can find sometimes the root cause, like the example I used with the mold. This woman had all these symptoms that were all across the board, and she went to all these different specialists, and they weren't able to figure out what was going on. Well, none of them got to the root cause. The root cause was mold exposure. She had black mold in her house, which is it's so dangerous. It can kill you, first of all, and second, over time. And secondly, it causes this plethora of symptoms that nobody had pieced together. So I'm going in blind and I'm going, holy mackerel, girl, you are covered in black mold. Where's the mold? She said, my cabinets. I said, well, what do you put in the cabinet? She goes, oh, our dishes and stuff. I try and wipe it down with bleach, but it keeps coming back. I'm like, oh, for goodness sake. So yeah, get the cabinets out of there. You got to get it remediated. Yeah. So great question.
Cool. Can we move on to some other family members that all
Sure.
put their hand up as well?
Sure.